Hi, good evening, everybody. I am Sneha Dhillon, your instructor for this Samvidhan course that has been designed by Legalstix Law School. So this is our first class pertaining to this particular certificate course. And we will be covering the entire constitution, in this particular certification. And with the various classes that we will take, we'll go through different aspects of the constitution, various parts and the provisions provided in it. This class, the first class for this course, Samvidhan, is designed to understand particularly what constitution is, or you can say that it is an introductory lecture. So I hope it will be a good and wonderful session for you, and hope Legalstix Law School is helping you, ace your law exams and is preparing you well for the future competitive exams as well. So the lecture for this particular, session, or how would I start this rather is, I would rather begin with, by telling you what is the Indian Constitution, or what is it about, or how it serves as, a blueprint for democracy, or what exactly do we have in it. Okay, so this lecture, so I'll before I begin, I'll just share my screen with you. So just give me a moment. I'll be sharing my screen. Hi Lakshita, I've seen that you are there in the class. So I am, currently just sharing my screen with you. We've just started with the lecture, and I hope you're able to see my screen now. If you're able to see my screen, you can just, raise your hand or maybe write something in the chat box. Okay, so what do we know about the Indian Constitution, or particularly what it is about, or what all things are there, what all features are provided? So we know that, to begin with, we know that it is one of the lengthiest constitutions in the world. Okay, so it gives you a framework for governance that will, ensure that all citizens are there participating in the decision making process. Fine. So we can also call it, as a epitome of equality. And uh, the reasons for saying this can be that, yes, fundamental rights are guaranteed to citizens regardless of what background they are coming from. And these rights will include things like right to equality, freedom, exploitation, different kinds of fundamental rights. Then there are other elements to it. It tells you how the government is actually made, or what is their about their policies, or how the organs of the state will function, and what they will do and how they will do it. So, to begin with, let's assume, or just think that we are not, individually there in the society. Of course we are not there individually in the society. Imagine you're part of a larger group, like we stay in a particular society, or in wherever you are staying. Imagine yourself that you are part of a very large group, and along with this along with different people that you are living with, you are actually having different kinds of let's say when you are speaking of the constitution, we are speaking of something for the society. Now this society, for example, say is a larger society. Now this particular society has large number of people, larger group. Now these people, say for example, have various characteristics. Okay, their age is different, they are from different religions, or their caste is different, language, their social structure, rich and poor, everything. Now, when different kinds of people are there in a society, okay, different groups are there in a society, of course, there might be a possibility that they would not agree with each other every time, okay? Every time they might not agree with each other. Then what do you need? What is the requirement? What will you do? Okay, so Lakshata, can you just tell me what would you do if there is a lot of people, say in a group, or maybe in a city, or maybe for your class, for that instance, what will you do? You might bring out somebody as your representative. Fine. You might bring out somebody as your representative who may become the voice of people. Okay. Now, this person or these group of persons who might become the voice of people, now what will they do? They will tell their problems, they will tell their requirements, or particularly, for instance, will tell you their aspirations. Okay. Aspirations इनकी किस तरह की हो सकती है? What kind of aspirations people might require in a larger group? Now, when you are speaking of a larger group, say instance of a colony, or say a society in a city, so their requirements might be, the water facility is not good, the electricity is not functional. So these kind of things they might ask, from the authorities, or from the channels who are actually holding a position of superiority there. Now, in case of a state, okay, in case of a state, now what do you exactly mean by a state here? In case of a state, the people might require things like their welfare, okay, education, then jobs can be another thing, infrastructure. So these kind of things might be required for them. Now, these people, comprising part of the group, then they have chosen somebody to become their representatives. Now, these representatives, somewhere with taking into mind the requirements of their own people, will make certain rules. Okay, these rules might be for education or anything. These rules might be for how they will, what are they supposed to behave, or how are they supposed to behave. So these rules might comprise about their daily routine. How are they supposed to behave, stay adequately in the society. So when we say that what does the constitution do, or what, in a very bare format, what constitution is? So constitution is just a set of rules. Okay, now these set of rules might provide you with things that will tell you how the state will function. Okay, now before I go further, what do we really mean by state? Okay, what do we really mean by state? So state jo hai, it has 4 elements to it particularly. Okay, so what am I meaning when I say the term state, and whenever I will be using it for the Indian Constitution, or whenever I'll be using it for other classes as well, what do I mean by state or country? मेरा मतलब है 4 एलिमेंट से, which means the population, okay, the territory, the government, and the sovereignty. By sovereignty, we means autonomy of this particular entity. Okay, so whenever I'm speaking of state, or whenever I'm speaking of set of rules, these set of rules speaks of how and when and where and in what manner the particular country or the particular state will function. So a country can be said on, so a particular entity can only be called a country when it has these four things. Okay, it has a dedicated designated territory, it has a government of its own. Government koi bhi ho sakti hai, it can be, it can be a democracy, or it can be, dictatorship, or it can be, aristocracy, or any kind of government, any form of government. And the state or the country is autonomous in its functions, and in its daily affairs. It is independent of outside control. So that is when what we mean by sovereignty. So now these set of rules will tell you how the state will function. Okay. Now another thing that we speak of set of rules, and that we speak of organs. अब यहाँ पे एक line लिखी हुई है, Constitution is a set of rules that govern these basic organs. Now a state will have certain functions. What is the function of the state? Welfare functions hai uske. Okay, and the state will also have certain police functions. Okay, the police function is, to create say peace in the society. To create peace in the society, and for creating peace in the society, the state will make different kinds of laws, and as for that, it will aim to create cohesion, it will aim to create solidarity. And then there might be other laws or other rules, or regulations that speak of welfaristic functions. Welfaristic functions means it may speak of education, it may speak of development, and these kind of things. Okay, so these things might be there. When we are speaking of these basic organs, okay, so organs मतलब state में ये अलग अलग तरह के functions कर कौन रहा है. So these set of rules is applicable on state organs. Fine. So there are three organs of the state, particularly when we are speaking of the constitution, or when we are speaking of the functions of the constitution or the functions of the state. We are speaking of three organs: legislature, we are speaking of the executive, and judiciary. Fine. So these organs do daily affairs, or these organs do day-to-day functions. And the day-to-day functions, what do I mean by day-to-day functions? So constitution is a document which provides for set of rules कि ये तीनों organs function कैसे करेंगे. Okay, अब ये functions अपने ये organs अपने functions को कैसे execute करेंगे, उसके लिए there are certain powers of these functions provided in the constitution. Okay, for example, the legislature will make laws, the executive will implement them, and the judiciary will interpret laws. Fine. So when we are speaking of what is the constitution, or why do we require it? The first thing is that constitution provides you with certain set of rules and regulations which is needed in a society for everybody to stay in cohesion. Okay, to stay in solidarity with each other, to reduce friction in the society. And how will the friction be reduced, or how there will be less of problems between different individuals when there is somebody to see that these rules are not broken, or these rules are followed appropriately. So generally speaking, we can just say, I think, just give me a moment. Yes. So we can just say here that what do we mean by a constitution? That constitution is just a set of rules that speaks of or that provides for fundamental law of the land. Okay. Now, what do you mean by fundamental law? Are other laws not fundamental enough, or are they not so basic enough to be called as fundamental? Or do they not help the state to, perform its daily functions? Yes or no? So, like I said, that, there are a set of rules and regulations given in the constitution, which help the organs to decide that who will get what function, or, who is supposed to actually decide that, who will legislate, who will execute the laws, who will implement the laws. So who will decide that these set of rules and what the organs are supposed to do? Just 3 organs hai maan lo, which we have, the organs of the Indian state, which is, like I said, legislature, executive, and judiciary. So who gets to decide, or where it is provided that who will do what as per the things that we are saying? Okay, so this law of the land, or this particular document, provides you all these things, so that the legislature gets to make laws, or it gets to uh, make legislations, or gets to uh, decide in the parliament what laws shall be made for the people. For this system, for this procedure, the constitution provides for setting of a parliament. Okay, it provides for setting of a parliament. It provides for the union executive and the state executive, wherein the union executive and the state executive, generally speaking, comprising of the president, the governors, and the bureaucracy. Here, creation of the Supreme Court, creation of the subordinate courts, these things are mentioned in the constitution. Okay, who will decide or who will appoint the members of bureaucracy? There is a specific chapter that speaks of public service commissions, or the union public service commissions. So these rules, or who gets to do what, and what are the different powers of different organs, all these things are mentioned in the constitution itself. Fine. So when we speak of why do we need a constitution, so we can say that it helps the state to carry out its daily functions, that the 3 organs can work smoothly. Okay, and these fundamental organs will be able to execute these functions without going into the domain of each other. So this concept, legislation will make laws, executive will implement them, and the judiciary will interpret them. This idea, or this concept of separation of powers, this is mentioned in the constitution. The word separation of powers is not mentioned, but they provide in the chapter or part 4 of the constitutions in directive principles that the judiciary should be independent of the executive. Okay, the judiciary shall be independent to do its functions. It should not be affected by what the other organs are doing, or the other organs shall not be able to actually decide how the judiciary is functioning. Okay, so specifically fundamental law of the land ka matlab kya hai? It is the law of the land, or we also call it the supreme law of land. So are other laws not supreme enough? Okay. Now we are speaking of two kinds of laws here. Fine. Wait. We are speaking of two kinds of laws here. So the constitution is a fundamental principle, so fundamental law. ठीक है, जो बताता है how the state shall be governed. Those things which are mentioned or the organs mentioned in the constitution will do their work. So there are certain laws which will be made by the organ legislature. These laws will be executed, and the judiciary will see whether these laws are legal enough, are they constitutional enough. So the judiciary will interpret that is it all right कि भाई सारे laws as per the requirements of the fundamental principles which are mentioned, are they made, in that manner. So together these rules, so where are these rules mentioned? What kind of rules are we speaking of? What are these rules? Okay, so constitution is a set of fundamental principles. So it is fundamental law of land. Okay, it is supreme law of land, fine, which provides for organs, what will be their functions, how will they be set up, what kind of legislation will be there, what kind of government will be there, that will be written. So all these principles will be written in a single document वहां जहां पे written constitutions है, जैसे कि इंडिया में, in a single document, and this particular document will be known as the constitution. So it is a document for the people, okay, which will tell what the government is supposed to do. Okay, the constitution is not making the government tell the people what they are supposed to do. Actually, constitution is giving a lot of power to the people, because it where does it derives its force? The preamble says, first line says, we the people of India give this particular constitution to our own selves. Okay, so constitution is a document which does not make or does not aid the government to restrain people. Rather, it it gives more facilities to the government to restrain the government, or it gives more facilities to the people to restrain the government. Rather, I used government very. Okay, so this in a manner only describes the functions. तो government के function बता दिए, तो मतलब उसकी limits भी बता दी. It limits the government. The government does not get absolute power in the constitution, or the government does not have absolute power over the people in India. The constitution is supreme. Okay, everything will be done as per the constitution. That is why it is supreme law. And anything that the government will do, the government or the state will have to create laws, for example. Now, when the state is making laws, the state will have to see, are they in consonance with the constitution or not? Are they violating any rules mentioned in the constitution or not? If they are violating any rules, the judiciary will interpret them to be ultra vires. Fine. Okay. So we will move forward. अब हमने ये सारी चीजें डिस्कस करी लास्ट स्लाइड पे. So particularly the constitution is fundamental law of the land. It is the fundamental starting point. Now, what can be these fundamental principles? What do you think these fundamental principles can be? Okay, generally the basic principles when we speak of the Indian Constitution are mentioned in the preamble. Okay, fundamental features can be, there is democracy, okay, sovereignty, secularism, republic, parliamentary form of government. And together, all these things, all these needs, or all these functions, or you can say all these characteristics, what are they working towards? They are working to achieve justice. They are working to achieve equality. They are working to achieve liberty of individuals. Okay? And ताकि क्या promote हो सके? Fraternity can be promoted to ensure fraternity of individuals. Like I said in the first place, the purpose of any kind of law or the purpose of any kind of rules. What is the purpose of any kinds of rules? Rules are supposed to, or law is supposed to make the society free of conflicts. Okay, so when there will be justice in the society, when there will be equality, means there will be rule of law and not of men, then only liberty of individuals will be sustained, and then only people will have the feeling of brotherhood, for each other. So we also say that why it is fundamental or why it is supreme, it is at the apex of every law, because other laws which are made by legislature, okay, other laws made by legislature need to see that any other principles which are mentioned in the constitution shall not be violated. Okay, so any kind of principles which are mentioned in the constitution, just like the concept of parliamentary democracy, the concept of equality, the concept of fundamental rights, these things are not violated. So these laws, fine, so these laws derive their legality and their applicability from this basic norm. Sometimes this basic norm is also known as grand norm. Okay, so in jurisprudence, Kelsen has given this theory of pure law. Okay, the pure law theory by Kelsen provides that in every society, or say in every state, there is one basic law. There is one basic law from which all other laws derive their power. Okay, and if the other laws are against this basic law, the laws might become void, means they do not have any kind of enforceability. Fine, so you've understood till here. Any doubts till here, Lakshata? Anything? Okay, so I move forward. Fine. Up next, iska feature kya hai? Like I said, it tries to answer questions relating to organs of the state, rights and liabilities of individuals, the rights and liabilities of governments, and their distribution of power. Distribution of power, we know there is this concept of separation of powers. तीनों organs के powers designated है, judiciary, executive, or legislature. Okay, it also provides certain fundamental rights to citizens or the other people of the country, citizens and non-citizens, दोनों को ये चीजें provide होती हैं. Liabilities क्या हैं individuals के? There is a part or a chapter which provides for fundamental duties. Fundamental duties किसमें है? Part 4A में है. पहले नहीं थी, it was not provided initially, but it was added after an amendment. Okay. Then there are liabilities of the government also. Does the government have absolute power? or it need to act within accordance or within the provisions prescribed by the constitution. So generally speaking, आपको बहुत सारे पेपर में एक एमसीक्यू क्वेश्चन मिलेगा that who is supreme in India. सुप्रीमेसी किसकी है इंडिया में? Is it the government who is supreme? Is it the people of India who are supreme? Or is it the constitution? So the concept here is, in India, the government is not supreme, the people are not supreme. Of course, the constitution gets its power from the people, but the supremacy is not of the people. The constitution is supreme. In India, where we follow the concept of rule of law, we mean rule of men nahi hai. Okay, not rule of men, rule of law. Means the principles given in the constitution are supreme. Even the government cannot tamper with them. Why the government cannot tamper with them? Because the powers of the government are mentioned in the constitution. How are the powers of the government mentioned in the constitution? Let's say we follow bicameralism. Bicameralism मतलब दो houses हैं, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. Fine. Who will be the members of Lok Sabha? Who can be the members of Rajya Sabha? Their qualifications are mentioned, and their disqualifications are also mentioned. Certainly one day people cannot decide for themselves, the government cannot decide कि भाई now we have political power and we say कि let's start making aliens, or let's start making people of other countries who are citizens of other countries as Lok Sabha members. They cannot do that, okay, because the qualifications are mentioned in the constitution. What decision they will take, how the bill will be passed, how they will have to make an amendment, ये सब चीजें, these are mentioned in the constitution. Okay, so this document, why it is a supreme document? It gives you the functions of the organs. Along with that, it also gives you the limitations. अब limitations का एक perfect example can be separation of powers. The legislature cannot interpret the laws which are made by itself. It cannot interpret. The legislature cannot execute. Judiciary cannot make laws. Okay. The judiciary, it cannot make laws. It might give guidelines. For example, the Vishakha judgment, the judiciary gave guidelines. Okay. It cannot make laws. It can make guidelines जिसके ऊपर a law will be made by the legislature, or be it the central legislature, the parliament, or be it the state legislature. So it can make guidelines. So the judiciary is supposed to follow restraint in its activities. Ki when you are interpreting the laws, you do not have to act like a lawmaker. You are just a mere interpreter. Okay. So the concept of supremacy of constitution, the concept of this being called as a fundamental law, provides that the functions of all organs are provided and restraint is also provided. So their limitations is also provided. So there is a statement which is given on the screen. Constitution is a source and not an exercise of legislative power. मतलब इसका क्या मतलब है? Means the legislative power or the parliament is not supreme. the constitution is supreme. One thing. Then the constitution does not get power from legislature, but the legislature get power from constitution. अब इसी से आप बात समझ सकते हो कि when the legislature is getting power from the constitution, because what it is supposed to do, okay, that there will be two houses, this will be the qualification, this will be the disqualification. If you go to another party, if you defect from your original political party after election, you will be hit by schedule 10 and you will be disqualified. If you are holding an office of profit, you will be disqualified. For instance, happened with Jaya Bachchan, okay, or the recent judgment of the Karnataka MLA's case, the recent constitutional judgment of the Maharashtra MLA's case. ये वाली जो judgment है अभी, I think it has come on 11th of May only. So the legislature is not supreme. Okay, the organs are not supreme. The constitution is supreme. The organs are supposed to function as per the constitution, as per what is mentioned in the constitution. The constitution will not function as per the organs say, or it will not function as per the whims and fancies of the organs. So the idea that these organs, what makes the constitution supreme? What makes the constitution supreme? The principles mentioned in the constitution makes it supreme. So this slide actually speaks of how can we say that the Indian constitution is the fundamental law, or it is the supreme law, or it is the basic grand norm. What makes it supreme? So the principles mentioned in the constitution itself makes it supreme. It is written, it has provisions on independent judiciary, और judicial review का जो concept है, judicial review का concept क्या हुआ? मतलब in case if something is against the principles, it will be held void or it will be held ultra vires. Means the judiciary is provided to test the legality. It is provided with the work to test the legality. There is a principle of rule of law. Rule of law shall be there in India and not rule of men. There shall be, following or fulfillment of the procedure established by law, equality before law, or the concept of rule of law or equality before law or procedure is established by law, which means you are providing for a just and fair system of governance. Okay, you are speaking of just and fair system of governance. There shall be free elections, free and fair elections. If there shall be no free and fair elections, तो separation of powers जो है वो अपना absolute तरीके से in a better manner will not be able to function. The government is accountable. Okay, the Council of Ministers are responsible to the Parliament, and they are also responsible, they are accountable to people of India. Okay, if they lose majority, in the House, they might have to prove their majority through a floor test, or if they are not able to fulfill or adhere to the aspirations of people of India, they might be changed in the next election after 5 years. Okay, then the constitutional principles, there are fundamental rights to people. 6 fundamental rights hain. Okay, particularly 6 rights are provided. So this is there. So this cannot be changed. Rather, when you will refer to article, यहाँ पे आपका article 30 जो है of the constitution, it says that any law which is inconsistent with fundamental rights shall be void. The government, the judiciary can do that. In case the legislature makes up a particular law that is against the fundamental rights, so to that extent it shall be void. This is mentioned in Article 13 of the Constitution. Okay, so then another principle इसके अलावा फेडरलिज्म है. Okay, that there is allocation of power between union and states. There is the power is not centralized in the union, it is decentralization of powers. इसके अलावा there are other different various principles which can be secularism, okay, democracy, all things mentioned in the preamble, equality, justice, fraternity, all these things. So these things are there to preserve the fundamental freedoms of individual, and they are there to maintain their dignity, and they are there to maintain their personality. So in order to help people to get their rights preserved, you need to put restrictions. Okay, so कुछ restrictions जरूरी हैं. तो ये चीजें जो हैं, there shall be rule of law, there shall be separation of powers, free and fair elections, the government being accountable, the system of dual government, fundamental rights to citizens. These all together, they work as restraints on the government so that people can get maximum opportunity of freedom, so that people can get maximum opportunity to fulfill their aspirations, to live the way they want, or to actually make India a welfareistic state. So why did the constitutional makers put on these inbuilt restrictions? Because they knew that if you give absolute power to the government, or if you give absolute power to one organ, okay, you give all the power to one organ, there might be a possibility that they will be corrupted. So this idea or this concept that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely, also applies on the organs of state, so that the organs do not become absolutely corrupt. They do not actually exploit their powers. There is a concept of separation of powers, and adherence to constitutional principles becomes necessary. The next, that there are two things that is left. Now, this idea कि भाई some inbuilt restrictions are necessary, or the power of the government is limited governance, इसको हम constitutionalism भी कहते हैं. Okay, we will be dealing with constitutionalism separately, in different classes when we do concepts of amendment and the concept of basic structure. But just remember for the future classes that constitutionalism is different from constitution. Constitution is fundamental law of the land, जिससे सारे laws अपनी force derive करते हैं. It is about that basic norm which provides the idea of legality and applicability to all laws in the country. The constitution helps you to give you answers to questions that what will be the rights and liabilities of individuals, what will be the functions of the state, how power shall be distributed. So this is constitution. Constitutionalism is the idea of limited governance. Okay, this idea of limited governance is necessary to also secure the principles. Okay, if there will be no limited governance, if you become absolutely powerful, if the organs have all powers to change whatever as per their whims and fancies, they might change the constitution itself. Okay, so when you speak of constitutional principles, or when you speak of the basic structure, you also speak of the idea of limited governance. So limited government or limited governance will help you secure basic freedom. And the idea of limited governance or limit or restrictions in the government is constitutionalism. For today's class, you can only, understand constitutional in these two lines. When we move further with different aspects, we will do it, in a more elaborate manner. Now, अब last चीज हमारी जो रह गई है, अब वो है constitutionality. But we will try to, relate it to another thing. See, there are the first thing or in the first see, the agenda of the class today was what is the meaning of the constitution. It is fundamental law of the land. It is the supreme law. Fine. Supreme law means all laws derive its power from the supreme. Okay, this we know. Why do we need the constitution? There are four things जिसमें you can you can justify it in four manner or 4 points. Ki why do we need constitution is you need certain basic set of rules to have a society where people can stay together in cohesion, and they can stay together without any conflict. Okay, you need constitution because you need to have a basic set of rules so that people do not get into conflict with each other, to reduce conflict. Okay, so you need it because you need certain set of rules. Then you need to actually provide for the functions and the responsibilities of the government. Okay, then the last two functions are here put on this slide. Key, these set of rules will take care about the aspirations and goals of the society, and it will see that whether there is coordination among members. Okay, whether there is coordination among members. So coordination among members, how it is being provided in the constitution. Sorry. Yes. How does these the idea of coordination among members, how these are provided in the constitution? Ki bhai, there are certain aspirations of individuals mentioned. Aspirations can be you give them certain rights, okay, or you make certain goals which are enshrined, which might be in the position of DPSPs, or kya goals ho sakte hain unke? They seek justice, they seek a just society, they seek a equal society, they seek liberty. Okay, they seek to have all these things so that they can stay together in cohesion to promote fraternity. Okay, and the last thing, that so that the responsibilities and the limits are set. Fine. Constitution, we've discussed the idea of limited governance. Okay, the idea of limited governance is constitutionalism. Now let's come to what is the difference between constitutionality and constitution. Constitutionality, when we are speaking of the role of judiciary here. Okay. We are speaking of legality. Constitutionality of any particular provision or any particular law means deciding the legality of that provision. Okay, वो किस context में can you actually refer to this legality being whether it is right, whether it is wrong? So the judiciary will actually see that the role of the judiciary is to actually interpret. or actually see if the organs are within their legal domain. So the work that is performed by the organs, say the executive or say the legislature, is the law in consonance with the constitution, or is it not in consonance? If it is fulfilling legality, it will be intra vires, not ultra vires. ठीक है? So is separation of powers followed? तो मतलब checks and balances का concept can to some extent be said as the idea of constitutionality. Was the idea of checks and balances, was the idea of separation of powers followed? Was the provision given by the legislation, was the law, the rule made by the legislation legal under the constitution? Or have they done anybody else's work? Okay, is the state actually acting as per the provisions of the state? When we are speaking provisions of the constitution, when we are speaking of the state, we means the three organs. Okay, so this is constitutionality. So introductory lecture, constitutionality, constitutionalism. Constitutionality का मतलब है the concept of legality. Okay, the concept of legality is that the provision, whatever is in question, is the provision as per the things mentioned in the constitution, or is it ultra vires? Okay, so this is the idea of constitutionality. Now, why do you think that from where does the constitution derive its powers? So this can be another MCQ that might come up in any exam, that in India, who is supreme? The constitution is supreme. And from where does the constitution actually derives its force? The constitution derives its force from the people of India. Okay? So when it gets its power from the people of India, or getting its power from people of India means the constitution is manifestation of spirit of people. This statement particularly is a statement given by Savigny from the historical school of jurisprudence about law. ठीक है, अब Savigny कहता है कि law is a manifestation of spirit of people. Okay, theory of Volkist भी इसे बोलते हैं. So he says that law is something which goes as per the need of people. Okay, as per the requirement of people. So constitution is also, it is a kind of law only. So, but it is a fundamental law. It is a supreme law. So this supreme law is also about what the people want. And what do they want? What do they really want? They need coordination among the members of the society. Like we started initially. Okay, imagine yourself to be a part of large group where you have a lot of differences. आपकी age का difference है, you know, your gender is different, your requirements as per your gender is different, your race is different, religion is different, your social and economic status is different. So when you have so much of differences, you can assume that there will be some kind of conflicts. Okay, there might be a possibility that some people try to make others feel inferior and themselves to be superior than others. But in such a situation, these members of this particular large group would require coordination. And they would require that coordination to have a support or a sanction, or you can say the force of law. Force of law या sanction of law का मतलब है that if you will break it, you will be punished. Okay? Why do people follow law? Why do people follow law? They might follow law because, you know, they might be scared of the punishment if that they might get if they break it. They are scared of, you know, what might happen to them. Or they might also follow law because they actually think that it is necessary to have coordination. If you will follow law, other people will also be able to live peacefully. So they might believe in the agenda of live and let live, and others might just follow law. It will be difficult for you otherwise. Okay, so these people, they require a set of rules for themselves that provides for coordination among themselves, and these laws will take care about their aspirations and their goals. Now, what are they actually aspiring to have? They are aspiring to have a society which is just and fair, which has equality, where they're able to speak freely, they are able to express themselves in a better manner. Their liberty is supreme. Okay. So, this idea कि भाई the Constitution of India is a manifestation of spirit of people, or that the Constitution, gets its force from the people. Where is it mentioned? The Constitution is supreme and not the parliament and not the government. This is one thing, that there is rule of law, there is supremacy of the Constitution. One question. Another thing, that this particular supreme constitution gets its power from the people. Getting power from the people matlab, when the people require it to be changed, it will be changed as per times. इसीलिए इस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को हम लिविंग कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन भी बोलते हैं. ठीक है? It is not static. It breathes with the people of India. It breathes and changes with the different time in India. Fine. So we can just say that the Constitution, gets its force from the people of India, is provided in this particular. I just erase the other things around it. Is provided in this particular statement. That is, we the people of India. Okay? We the people of India have provided this constitution to ourselves. We the people of India have given constitution to ourselves on this particular date. We the people of India, in the preamble, it is stated that the constitution is given to the people of India, to them by themselves. And what kind of a society do they want? How do they say that there will be coordination among members of the society? Because they have decided to make India into a sovereign nation, a socialist nation, secular democratic republic, sovereign. I'll just give you a gist of these things. We'll do everything into detail when we come to the specific topic of the Indian preamble, but I'll explain you the preamble from the context of how Constitution derives its powers from the people, okay, or derives its force. Who is the real authority behind the Constitution? I'll not say authority, the real, I'll say the force behind the Constitution is the people of India, who say that India will now be sovereign, means it will be autonomous or independent of outside control. Okay. It will be socialist. Socialist matlab there will be reduction, or there will be reduction in inequalities of income, or there will be reduction in that how property will actually be taken up. So we are not actually a country that follows socialism in exact. method, but we are a socialist country with a welfareistic democracy. So we are a blend of both capitalism also and socialism also. So we are aiming at a welfareistic democracy where the welfare of people is of supreme importance. Secular matlab there is no I'll say no formal religion, or the government will not actually interfere in religion. Government will not interfere in religion. It is neutral to how people have their relationship with their god or what beliefs do they follow, until and unless it is affecting somebody's health, public order or morality, tab tak government isme step in nahi karegi. So everybody will given a right to practice and profess their own religion. The government does not have a national, or the state does not have a national religion. The government is neutral in matters of religion. And saying all these things, ये सब इन्होंने इंडिया को बनाने के लिए they've decided it so that what they can have, if these things are there, they can attain justice for themselves, fairness in terms of social, economic and political justice, liberty of thought expression, faith and worship. Equality means you will be having the concept of rule of law and not rule of men. And so that if you get all these things and you will work to promote coordination among various members of the society, all these things together will assure dignity of individuals. Okay? So these two dates are important in the constitution, which is mentioned in the preamble. One of them is mentioned in the preamble. The other one is mentioned in article 394, and the first is mentioned in the preamble. So 394 speaks of commencement of the constitution. Commencement के बारे में बात करता है, that it got enforced on 26 January 1950 or adopted on 1949 26 November. दूसरी चीजें इसमें कुछ important है from the point of view of the first lecture. Before I wind it up, few little things कि it almost took 3 years to make. Precisely आप कह सकते हो 2 year 11 months and 17 days, comprising of 11 sessions. मतलब 11 sessions हुए इस duration में, and 165 days. मतलब Constituent Assembly 165 times in this duration of almost 3 years sat together to make the constitution. These questions are they are important, or you can say they are useful from the point of view of MCQ type questions which might come up in competitive exams. And these particular sessions, they were made, or they took place in the constitutional hall, which is now the central hall of the parliament. Okay, the central hall of parliament, मतलब अभी central hall कहते हैं. So these particular meetings happened in the central hall of parliament, as it is called today. पहले इसको constitutional hall बोलते थे. Okay, this becomes important, and when we are speaking of these 9 sessions, 165 days. So for the first time, the assembly sat together. The first session, or the first meeting that happened, of the Constituent Assembly, when they sat together to work on the Indian Constitution, was 9th of December 1946. पहली बारी 1946 9th December को ये कमिटी बैठी थी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली की and they started making the constitution. So this is the lengthiest constitution in the world. Okay, it is a lengthiest written constitution. तो written का मतलब है यहाँ पे it was actually handwritten. Okay, it was handwritten. It was handwritten by एक कैलीग्राफर थे प्रेम बिहारी नारायण रायजादा. Okay, प्रेम बिहारी नारायण रायजादा. This particular calligrapher wrote the constitution in italics. English calligraphy mein it was written, and because it is a written constitution, this preamble is not a picture from the real constitution of India, but on every page particularly there are paintings and sketches and drawings which are made. So these drawings were also made by two artists, whose name is important from the point of questions that might come in competitive exams. So Nandlal Bose and एक दूसरे वो थे Ram Manohar Sinha. Okay, the other person is, पूरा नाम है बियोहर Ram Manohar Sinha. So these two were artists who have given illustrations to the final manuscript. और जो राम मनोहर सिन्हा है, if you will see the original preamble, उसमें जो ये side में these illustrations of this particular pattern which is made on the preamble in the original format, there is a beautiful pattern made on the four border corners of the preamble. That was made by Ram Manohar Sinha, and the other paintings on each page of the Indian Constitution, they were illustrated by Nandlal Bose. So we have, we come to the conclusion of the lecture now. So we've particularly understood why do we need the Constitution. We actually need the Constitution particularly to provide ourselves certain kind of basic laws and regulations, rules and regulations, so that we can have coordination among members of the society, and we can specify who have decision making powers in the country, that which organ will have what particular powers, who will make the rules, and what kind of laws will govern this kind of society. So these answers are actually given by the Constitution. It helps you decide what laws will be, first thing, okay, who will make them, okay, what kind of structure will you have, whether it is a monarchy, whether it is a democracy, fine, whether there will be parliamentary form of government, or whether there will be presidential form of government. So these kind of answers are given to you by the Constitution. So we need it for this reason. Now, for example, when we speak of the Indian Constitution, okay, so the parliament gets to decide laws and policies. All right, parliament has to be organized in a particular manner for that. Fine. Before you identify creating of specific law in the society, you need to identify who will have the authority to make it. Okay, so if the parliament in India has authority to enact law, then there must be a law that gives this authority to the parliament. So Constitution gives this authority to the parliament to make laws. So this is another function. Okay, so we can say that the Indian Constitution specifies who has the power to make decisions in the society, and how the government will be constituted. So when we are speaking of why do we need the constitution, तो पहली चीज तो इसमें हो गई कि the constitution, this particular supreme law of the land, it provides you with a set of basic rules. Okay, these basic rules provide for coordination among members of the society so that there is cohesion, there is solidarity between them. Secondly, it provides for who will have decision making powers. Okay, who will actually make decisions in the society. So who will actually decide how the government will be constituted. So the constitution's second function come with this, that it is to specify who will make decisions and how the government will be constituted. When you are coming on the third function of the constitution, or why do we need it? So you need, अब आपने ये तो बना दिया कि भाई the government will be constituted in such a manner and they have the power to make decisions in the society, but you need to limit them कि वो बिल्कुल whims and fancies पे चलना बंद कर दे, and some kind of limitations on the government is required. The constitution provides for such limitations. मतलब the third function we are speaking of, that the constitution gives some limits on what a government can impose. These limits are fundamental. Fundamental matlab they cannot be trespassed. Fine. So when we are speaking of limits, particularly, they can limit the government in various different manners. Fine. Now I'll just tell you how the government is actually limited. Limited matlab the very easy method of limiting the government is that you give fundamental rights to your citizens, okay, which cannot be violated by the government. So these fundamental rights, उनका interpretation क्या होगा, उनका exactly content क्या होगा, वो हर constitution का अपना अलग अलग होता है, but generally speaking, most of the constitutions will, they will actually protect cluster of rights. मतलब कुछ 5-6 गिने चुने rights हैं, example equality, example liberty, secularism, idea of right to life. So these things particularly will be protected in each and every constitution, and by providing these kind of fundamental rights, they are actually imposing on the government to not trespass them. Okay, so this brings on the third function. The last function is that as the constitution actually gives decision making powers to the government. गवर्नमेंट को डिसीजन मेकिंग पावर दिया और उस पे कुछ लिमिट्स भी लगा दी, बट इट इज आल्सो अ लिविंग डॉक्यूमेंट. Fine, it helps you or it helps the government to do also certain good things. Okay, there are certain provisions which are mentioned in the Indian Constitution which the government aims to achieve. Okay, the directive principles of state policy to reduce inequalities of income, to have a just and humane society, or to make provisions which are there, okay, in it, to bring them out on paper in the form of laws. So the last function we can say is that the idea is to actually get in reality or bring out in reality the aspirations of the society. Okay, so because society changes with time, the requirements of people change with time, they also empower the government to reduce or to overcome inequality or various kinds of deprivations which people might have. So constitutions provide with creating a provision in the society that the society's aspirations will be taken care of by by the government, by the constitution, or the government will aim to actually take care of its citizens from cradle to grave. Okay, this idea of taking care of its citizens from cradle to grave This was also held by the Supreme Court in one of the case laws, DS Nakara ka ek case hai. So there they've said, you know, the need of the constitution or the requirement of the constitution is to take care of its citizens, or the government is supposed to take care of its citizens from cradle to grave. That is the idea of welfareistic democracy. You know, a society which is based on welfare of its people rather than any kind of discrimination, and that is how they can actually create a just and humane society. Okay, they will create conditions that will help in fulfilling the aspirations of the people, and then only they will be able to make a just and problem free, or you know, conflict free society. And they you know, help to actually you know, give identity to the people of that particular country. So importantly, अब ये चार provisions तो हो गई. So finally, when we are speaking of why do we need the constitution, we also needed to provide an identity to its people. Okay, so the people of India, they can actually come into being collectively through the basic constitution only. They have agreed to basic set of norms on how they shall be governed, who will govern them. So this collective identity of theirs, they have, you know, they've decided for themselves that they will bring this out in the form of a constitution. Okay, bringing or making the constitution as supreme. They will actually, you know, the constitution actually sets up certain kinds of authoritative constraints on what one shall do or what one shall not do. So the fundamental values which are not to be trespassed are to be you know, mentioned in the constitution, or are mentioned in the constitution. So it gives you a fundamental identity to its people, it gives moral identity to its people, and it also takes care of their political and moral values. Okay, so this is what I think we will, you know, end up the class here only. So in the next class particularly, we will take up another topic, which is the making of the Indian Constitution. So we will be starting with you know, the historical background, that how did the Constitution actually reach the way it was in the present form, or how did it actually reach in the form of, you know, the way it was in 1950s. So what is the story, how the cabinet mission plan, these things have helped in creation of the Indian Constitution? What is, you know, the role of the partition in this particular aspect, the role of the Indian National Congress, the role of the Muslim League, and, you know, the role of the Britishers. So those aspects we will be referring in the next class. So we'll wind up here now. It is, I think we've already, you know, surpassed the time limit also. So thank you for paying attention, and keep on, you know, witnessing and looking into various classes that are done by Legalstix. Thank you, and see you in the next class. Good evening, everybody.